What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Brothers Geek Out channel. This is another episode of Life Lessons with MoonKnight. I'm joined here by Elia, aka my wife. She is specialized in counseling, trauma, sensitive yoga, and all that sort of stuff, right? Me and kids, when we geek out about these shows, we geek out about the possibilities of what can happen from the comic books, which characters can intertwine, where MoonKnight can go in the future, all that sort of stuff. We geek out. Whereas the missus here kind of sees it from a different perspective in regards to what life lessons we can take from these characters. Now, MoonKnight was a show where this character, and I think all the characters go through dramatic stuff in their life and traumatic stuff in their life, but MoonKnight really expressed a different part that we haven't seen. I don't think we've seen in any character in the MCU so far. Where he went through some really traumatic stuff in his childhood. The loss of his brother, his mother blaming him, him going through all of that, which caused his condition, his multiple personality condition, what's it called, ADS? DID, sorry, excuse me.
Dissociative identity disorder.
Alright, so which caused this disorder, and especially I'm going to say episodes 5 and 6 really went into his background, right? And it was the most traumatic stuff. So let's go into it. Let's get into it. I mean, you got some notes here, and let's take away. I guess we could talk about it first, right? Like I said, he went through so much traumatic stuff, and we were talking about it. I think we briefly touched on it when we were talking about Doctor Strange. He created these different personalities, right, to protect himself ultimately from the traumas that was going on in his life. Stephen was the protector, really, right? He said in episode 6 that you are my greatest superhero or power, because Stephen was the one that protected him from all the traumatic stuff that he went through, so he can live his life. Stephen was happy, he was jolly. I don't know if he was happy and jolly, but he was living a life. He was working and all that sort of stuff, right? And then by the end of the show, we saw Jake Lockley, who was the one who was the most violent one. And I believe he was the one that took all the beats and took most of the trauma, the bad trauma, and which made him so violent. Where Mark was just a normal life. And I was kind of referencing it to Instagram, right? Everyone is Mark. That's your normal life. But when you do your Instagram stories and your Instagram posts about I'm on holiday, look at the food I'm eating, whatever, right? Look at my amazing life. That's everyone's Stephen. So even though I'm not saying, of course, unfortunately, some individuals do suffer with this disorder legitly, and we're going to talk about this in a bit. But I think all of us have a little bit of that, and I'm relating it back to Instagram because Stephen is everyone's Instagram stories. That's my theory, because that's where you show all the happiness and stuff. Some people don't. You've seen some people might express sad stuff or certain stuff in the news or whatever. But I'm just saying in general, Stephen is everyone's Instagram, social media, because that's where you show the happy side in the world. And then everyone in real life is Mark. You're living your life, you're working, you're stressing about work, you got anxiety, all that sort of shit. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think I'm kind of right in saying that? I'm not talking crap.
I mean, I guess if you see it metaphorically, then yeah, I guess Stephen would be kind of the representation of the image that most people want to portray to others or in the public view. Like they don't really show their full selves, right? I think a lot of us kind of hide parts of ourselves because we don't really feel like we could be vulnerable with everyone. So we just present one part of ourselves, especially when it comes to social media. We tend to hide the parts that we are more ashamed of or that we don't want people to know about. So it's really just presenting the things that would be more palatable to other people, like to see like the happy stuff, which is usually what is more acceptable, I guess, in today's society.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I'm saying. When you do that on Instagram, let's be real. Yes, influencers and blah blah blah. But generally, you're doing it because you're kind of reaching out or you're kind of showing something. Like, you know what I mean? It's a platform. It's not just Instagram. Social media is kind of a platform for showing something. And the generally thing to show people is like you're living a great life. Everything's happy, everything's amazing. I got a PlayStation, let me take a picture, or whatever it is. I'm watching a Marvel show, I'm happy at this present time. I'm taking a picture of the TV because I'm watching Marvel. I'm letting everyone know that I'm in a happy place right now.
Mhm.
But throughout your day, you're in regular life, you're in anxiety and whatnot. But let's touch on some of the points that you took away, because like I said, this was a very traumatic show, and it's one of the, how did you put it? This one of the characters that,
Like more complex characters, I would say.
one of the most complex characters in the MCU. I mean, listen, we get aunts dying, parents dying, characters going through their own adversity and whatnot, and then becoming heroes. This was a character where his past traumatic incidents got him to where he is today. And that's the death of his brother, man, when he was a kid, and his mother blaming him. It's freaking heartbreaking. But let's go through some of these lists. So, point one, you wrote, the best time to sought help for yourself was yesterday. So what do you mean by that?
Well, so we saw in like Mark's history, when we kind of went back in time to see what actually happened in his childhood, you saw that his mother was really grieving a lot, and in her grief she was also taking out her anger and frustration on Mark, thinking that he was to blame for his brother's death. Right? And there was a lot of things happening. She was also abusing him physically, it seemed like. And it seemed like the father was trying to help, but then no professional help ever actually came in, whether it's for the mother or for him as a child who had to bear witness to his brother's death, and maybe he might also be carrying that guilt and personal responsibility for that.
And he did, right? Remember in episode 5, I think he was saying to himself, Stephen, it was my fault, right?
Yeah. And the thing is that there was no one who came in to really help him to understand what actually happened, and to help him to even stop that violence in the first place, because we don't really know what the father did. And it seemed like the father didn't do much, which is why we had that scene where he was leaving home when he was maybe 18 or something, and then he didn't come back. I guess the main point or the main lesson here is that we should really be seeking help as early as possible, and I guess to even be proactive and to not wait until something bad or dramatic happens, but to really be taking care of our own mental health. Like, I mean, we say all these things about taking care of our health, about our health, but we only think about it in terms of physical health, right? Like, you gotta exercise, you gotta eat well, you gotta take your supplements, but then we forget that your mental health is just as important, and you don't just wait until you feel depressed or you feel stressed, but what can you do proactively to even prevent those things from building up? So in like Mark's case, it's like he could have been helped way like earlier, instead of him waiting to the point where he actually developed this dissociative identity disorder.
I mean, in some way, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, him and his mother, right, definitely needed his help. The father looked like he was somehow getting along, but yeah, those two characters specifically, I feel like Stephen was almost like his way of helping himself. And I'm not saying that's the best way, but him creating Stephen was his kind of way of getting his own help.
Yeah, it was like, because when, in a way, if you, there's no other outside help, there's no other professional figure that's able to support the child, what they do is sometimes we have parts of ourselves that come in to protect us, and in this way, Stephen is that dissociation from the true reality of his life. So with Stephen, he is able to live a normal life, a happy life with his family, where he has a really positive and happy relationship with his mother, and that in that dissociation it helped him in some ways, right?
Yeah. Well, that was a good point as well, because obviously the relationship with his mother was not good, and Stephen was the one that was portraying that it was good. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point. The second point you wrote is you are not broken or fractured. So he obviously thought he was broken and fractured. Kongshu obviously picked him because obviously he manipulated him, but he even expressed it, no, you got a broken mind, like you're fractured. So even Kongshu's influence was telling him that he was broken and fractured. And I think at one point in episode 3 or 4, when he was in front of the other gods, he was like, I am broken. I remember when they were talking about Harold.
Yeah, I think he said, yes, I need help or something like that. So he acknowledged that he needed help. But I think it was in episode 5? I think Stephen was the one who said that, we are not broken. mentioned that you're not broken. And I guess this lesson kind of comes from the fact of, you know, my own training and what I'm learning right now about internal family systems therapy. And I've told you before, like how all of us, whether or not we have any form of trauma, all of us have different parts to us. Like I think that's the whole idea of moving away from this idea that we only have one mind and one personality, but rather that we naturally have different personalities and different parts to us. And so to think, sometimes when people undergo trauma, like they think that they are broken and they can't be put back together, like something's just wrong with them. But the truth is, we are all whole. You know, whether or not we've experienced trauma, we all whole. And I think this is what this series kind of shows, because even with Mark, who has gone through like extreme childhood trauma, and he has developed this dissociative identity disorder, but at the end of it, we kind of see that he's still whole. Like he's not like lost forever. He's not actually broken. Like there are ways for him to get to know his parts. Like once he started to get to know Stephen and they were able to work together, like things actually, they actually became even stronger, right? You saw in the fighting scenes and everything,
Yeah, exactly. So he was whole the whole time. He just had to.
He just had to, get to know all of his different parts as well. I think that was one of the other lessons that came.
Yeah, because when he was with Stephen, when he had that emotional speech with Stephen, that's when he was able to go back to the real world. And like you said, just they were able to fight better. All right, well, yeah.
Yeah, I guess to that point, we also just want to mention that, you know, we are all inherently worthy as well. Sometimes we forget that we're actually worthy and we don't have to do anything to become worthy. We don't have to earn our worthiness. And it's really more about how much harmony or disharmony that we have within our internal system. So like when our parts are kind of like fighting against each other, or like that's a lot of disharmony within, so which is where we see Jake's character coming in, because he is completely, in a way, he's the unconscious part of Mark, because they still don't know that he exists. They have some kind of maybe clues, but then they don't really know much about him. And because of that, Jake is going off and doing all these things on his
Very
own.
violent, right? Yeah.
And so that causes disharmony within like Mark's personality, like his life, right? So there's no balance there. But
So
the truth is, we are whole, we are worthy, and if we can find that harmony within, then that's the main path to healing, I guess.
And that's a good point, because obviously we're going to see more of Jake Lockley. Right now we see him as violent, no remorse, no nothing, right? He's the most violent one. But I feel once Mark becomes whole with him, he'll be able to control that violence. Now use it when needed, right? But not, because right now he's using it without knowing, and that could be dangerous to himself, to society. You see at the end of episode 6, when he done the big battle and he's about to die and he turned into Jake, it wasn't just he beat Harrow and his men. There was cars on fires, the building, like everything was messed up. So he is very destructive, almost like Hulk-like, right? But I feel like once he gets to know Jake and becomes whole with Jake, he will be able to control that. So his violence will be targeted towards the enemy, not everything around, which is interesting. That's a good point. All right, trauma is not about what happens to you, it's about what happens inside of you in the absence of empathetic witness.
So this is something that I've learned through my own like trauma therapy training. It's about, we sometimes think that trauma is what happened to us, right? We think about it in terms of experiences or incidents that we have gone through, but really it's the fact that there was no one to empathetically witness with you what actually happened to you. So in Mark's case, when his brother passed away, there was no adult figure to sit there with him and process what actually happened, and to also help him to unburden the belief that it was his fault, and to help him through that whole grieving process and everything, right? So there was no support, there was no I don't know how else to explain it, but there was no one there to empathize with whatever he was going through. Not even his parents, and actually they kind of probably added on to his guilt, right? Especially what his
because it's not, yeah, because in that unfortunate situation, the people you want to turn to are your parents, right? Because they're the most important things to you, the people to you in the world at that point, especially at that age. But then when your parents are piling on and also feeding you, what your mother especially, right, is feeding you with that, it just adds on to that trauma. Because guilt is a fucked up thing, right? And if you feel like, if you're feeling that guilt, and then the one person who's supposed to kind of comfort you and make you feel like, look, it's not your fault, and ease that guilt of you is added to that guilt, I mean, that's just the next level of trauma, man. Okay, the next point was, when you deny, reject, or repress parts of yourself, they don't just disappear.
Yeah, so when it comes to this lesson, it's really about embracing all the different parts of us. So maybe like in your own experience, right? Like maybe there are parts of us that we deny because other people around us have denied it or told us that it's bad or it's wrong, and so we tend to push those parts of ourselves away. And when we do that, they start to show up in unconscious ways instead, such as sudden impulses or uncontrollable behaviours, which is where you see like Jake Watley's character or personality coming in. So he's part of that unconscious way. That's probably because Mark has been repressing his own anger and all of the pain and the trauma, the physical abuse that he experienced from his mother. He might have locked it away, and that kind of resulted in this character of Jake Locke, where he becomes then really violent, probably carrying a lot of that anger and resentment towards the world, towards his mother even. So I guess the lesson here is to really learn to look within ourselves and to really see what are the parts of ourselves that we might be pushing away or hiding or repressing, so that instead of them coming out and you acting in unconscious ways, you can be more conscious of, what do these parts of us need and how can we be there for these parts of us, so that we can be more integrated and more in harmony instead of acting in ways that we don't feel good about.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So are we talking about, so if I'm just using myself as an example, like maybe training for me is a way of me feeding these other unconscious parts of me that I like, and that's the best way for me to like be it express them or control them. Is that am I thinking this the right way?
I mean, I can't really say.
Okay.
I mean, that we will have to like explore deeper into your own like psyche and the different parts of yourselves. But it could be there might be different parts of you that feel you need that outlet to I don't know. Yeah, like you said, express yourself. Depends on how you use training, right? Yeah, so it doesn't. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't explain that.
All right, cool. All right. Point number 5 was healing is possible when we I'm gonna read now. Healing is possible when we begin the process of meeting all our parts with curiosity, compassion, and understanding.
Yeah. So I guess related to all the lessons that we've talked about so far, the process of healing really begins when we're able to meet all the different parts of ourselves with curiosity, compassion, and understanding, which is what Mark eventually did with Stephen, where we saw that process after he died. He finally, in a way, that underworld, that journey going through that underworld.
The doer.
Yeah. That process, like that journey, was him going within and resolving all of that issues that he had. That is when he finally met Stephen as a personality that's outside of himself. Like Stephen even had a body for himself, right?
Yeah.
And through that process, he was then really, both Stephen and Mark were able to really see each other's pain, the experiences that they have gone through, and to really meet each other and understand each other, why they are the way they are. And through that process, the healing began, and then eventually, Stephen kind of sacrificed himself in a way to save Mark's life, and then Mark eventually came back, and then they were kind of reunited, and through that process, they came back alive. something. And also, it's possible when you are finally willing to meet all these different parts of yourselves instead of running and hiding because we fear them.
Well, Stephen was the one that was opening the doors. Oh, what's this? What's that? Let me chase the kid. Where Mark was not, right? So Stephen was the curiosity one, and then he was also the compassionate one, because he was curious, trying to understand what's going on, and then he was the one who told Mark, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." So it's interesting. Again, Stephen, who is the one who has been protecting him this whole time, was also the one that allowed him, who helped him to heal through the curiosity, the compassion, and understanding.
And the important thing to remember also is that these qualities of curiosity, compassion, of like courage and confidence, like all of these are already within us, within each of us. Like we don't have to go outside looking for it or to think that we need to practice or to cultivate it inside ourselves. It's already present. It's more about how do we access them, right? And so this is what we see, like there are different, even with the different personalities, there are different characteristics, there are different strengths that each of these personalities hold, and different weaknesses, and it's just about learning more about each of these different parts of ourselves.
Okay, interesting. And I think even that, they were expressed in their costumes, their avatar costumes. Stephen had less, like, he was in a three-piece suit, but he didn't have the cape and all the extra armor and whatnot. He was able to kind of, I guess his fighting style was more like, how do I put it? Like, more fluent and more, with less, how do I put it? Just more close combat and whatnot. Whereas with Mark, he had the cape, he had the hood, he had everything else. I mean, I'm just saying, it just kind of expresses in their costume as well. Point number 6, the last one. We truly wish to live fully or experience life to its fullest. I'll leave that there and you can express the rest of it.
So if we truly wish to live to our fullest, we first need to get to know and love all of our parts for what they are and not abandon any of them. So I guess this final lesson is kind of building on from all of the previous lessons. It's when we are finally able to love all of our parts, then we can live fully from our wholeness instead of just living a very limited life, right, where you're just only expressing one part of ourselves and then shutting off all the other parts. That way we don't really get to express ourselves fully, and as a result we don't really get to live fully. So when we, there's this expression that, oh, live life to your fullest, and I always wondered what that meant. Like, how do you live your life to the fullest? Like, does it mean try everything or do everything? But then I guess in my own journey I've realized that it's not about what you do externally, it's about how you are within. And when we have access to our wholeness and to all the different parts of ourselves, that's when we can live our lives to the fullest. And I guess related to that, it's about really to stop abandoning parts of ourselves, which is what, I guess that's what Mark kind of said at the end in episode 6. He was like, he came back for Stephen, who was stuck in the Duat, and then he kind of said that, I'm not going to abandon you again, like, there's no way I'm abandoning you. And when he reached his hand out to Stephen, and then, was it Osiris who kind of opened the gate for them to go back to the world of the living, because he kind of saw, okay, now they are both acknowledging each other, and he was touched by that whole scene, and he was like, okay, let me give them this chance to go back alive. So I guess, that is in the fantasy world, but I guess when it comes to real life, it's about just meeting all of our parts, loving all of our parts, and not abandoning any of them, so that we can really live our lives to the fullest as well.
Okay, that makes sense. It's always like being true to yourself, right, no matter what. Cool, awesome. Well, look, we'll finish off with this quote, right? I really appreciate you seeing these things in this angle, because I don't see that stuff. To be honest, I'm seeing MoonKnight, I want him to kick ass and whatnot. But obviously, through this show, you can't help to even though I'm enjoying it as a comic book show, I can't help but not see the traumatic stuff that he's gone through. All of these characters, be it Marvel, DC, whatever it is, all these characters go through such traumatic childhoods or whatever parts in their lives, and I always love the story of someone overcoming adversity, right? There's a lot more to it. Some people go through traumatic stuff and unfortunately they go in bad directions. What I love about these heroes and what I guess what the point of all these heroes are is you can overcome the adversity and do good, right? Rather than go down bad. So I've always loved that. That's why I always love the superhero stuff, because it's about overcoming adversity and doing good and whatnot. But yeah, let's finish off the quote. You want me to read it or are you going to read it? You know I can't read.
You can read it.
Alright, this quote is from E.E. Cummings. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best, night and day, to make you like everybody else, means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight, and never stop fighting. We'll end it there. Alright, cool. Thanks everyone, appreciate you watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, see what your thoughts are. If you have any thoughts on it, any lessons you've taken away, please express them in the comments box, and we'll be back with the next one. Peace.